Good morning, everybody. Happy Tuesday to you on this April 22nd, 2025. I have all of your stories for your rush hour ride to work. And on today's episode, we'll be discussing Bikini Bush, the new fad that's taking over the nation. And then more updates on the passing of the Pope. We'll share what others have had to say about his life's work and what he meant to the world. Also, Justin Baldoni's lawyer speaks now following this sham lawsuit that's come out. And we hear from other lawyers how this could actually hurt Blake Lively's case. It's very fascinating. And speaking of fascinating legal news, Harvard sues the president. I didn't have that on my bingo cards before this year, but hey, F it. I didn't have a lot of things on my bingo cards, like Bikini Bush, but here we are. And then we'll get into a talk about primaries. I know it's a long way away, but it's a fascinating conversation. And then the odds that Pete Hegseth will be fired today have risen. I'm going to share what those odds are and why they have gone up so much. So a lot of stories to get into. We've got it all happening right now on The Rush. All right, why don't we start off with some light news just to ease us into this commute. Drew Barammore calls out audience members for snickering over her Bush in a bikini trend segment. Listen, I don't know if this is a trend or just Drew Barrymore is getting old, but we all come to a time in life where we say, you know what, that Bush wasn't such a bad idea. Have a listen.
According to Vogue, a full Bush in a bikini is trending on TikTok, with users saying that they should embrace the natural, less upkeep, less like razor burn. I'm excited by this information. I am.
Me too. So embarrassing.
Do you see girls snickering over in the back there? May I ask what's so funny? I'm dying to know.
Hi.
I was just wondering what you girls were laughing about.
We're actually from Brazil, and I think...
All right, so there it is. So they're from Brazil. They go full Bush. No, not in Brazil. They invented the wax. I mean, come on. That's how you know the country's good for something. Like the French invented French toast. The Brazilians got the Brazilian wax. The who's got the landing strip? That comes from the some other country. I don't know. Anyhow, let's just move it on. Let's say, hey, you got to warm it up with something light. You know what I mean? And okay, we're going to go to something a little heavier, and this is the passing of the Pope. Cardinal Dolan speaks of the death of Pope Francis. He's actually possibly in line to become the next Pope, so I'm told. He would be the first Pope to come from the United States. Now, listen, there's going to be a whole political process to go along with who becomes the next Pope. Do they choose a Pope who's left-leaning or right-leaning? I really hope we can make something not political for once. I mean, right? Can't I just I made a joke yesterday about Elon Musk donating to the cause, but I wouldn't be surprised. You see the Pope Mobile's Tesla and you're like, oh boy, the Pope's bought and sold. Either way, here's what the Today Show had to say. Timothy Cardinal Dolan joins the Today Show to discuss the high sacrifice and how it was symbolic that he actually passed after Easter. Have a listen.
The significance of him passing on the Easter Monday, how does that strike you?
High significance. I always say this, we can't choreograph the way we go. But if you could, this wasn't bad. So yesterday was the day that the Christian world celebrated resurrection, new life, that Jesus conquered death and shares his triumph with us. And then we wake up the next morning to hear that his representative here on earth, the Bishop of Rome, the successor of Peter, our Holy Father, the Pope, had actually passed over, to borrow the word from our Jewish neighbors, from life here to life everlasting. You couldn't have choreographed it better. He was kind of into that. You know, we know Pope St. John Paul II was a trained actor. Cardinal Bergoglio, Pope Francis, was kind of like a natural. He kind of knew the power of symbols. He was very authentic. He was very sincere. He didn't want to put on a show, but it came natural to him, the hug, the kiss, the blessing, the smile. And so I think you'd almost think he had planned it, which we know he didn't, but God planned it, and I thank God for the beautiful way that he went on.
I mean, of all the days, Easter Monday, I mean, it really is symbolic. Now, I wanted to share one more clip here that we have. This is when 60 Minutes interviewed Pope Francis last year, and he talked about people who see wars, injustice, and crime, and they respond with indifference. Now, this is actually something that's really close to my heart. and I know a lot of people get triggered with the conversation of religion. I'm certainly not triggered by having the conversation. I just want to reiterate, I don't criticize anybody who practices a strong faith. I criticize those who are hypocritical, who practice a faith but don't walk in those footsteps on the 6.5 days that they're not going to church. That's who I'm critical of. Those that might vote against things that Jesus would have taught, right? Loving your neighbor, spreading that wealth, not just within your cul-de-sac, but to people that are in need. Things to me, those that grift and use religion to sow fear, or actually will use religion to enrich themselves, but not, those are the types of things. I think it would be fair for us all to shame that, because that wouldn't be Christ-like, right? Well, here's what, and I'm not by any means saying I'm on the same level of the Pope here, by all means. I'm just saying Pope Francis here had a good message to share. They do the translation. I hope you guys can listen.
I was so struck when you talked about the globalization of indifference. What is happening?
Do you want me to state it plainly? People wash their hands. There are so many Pontius Pilates on the loose out there who see what is happening, the wars, the injustice, the crimes. That's okay, and wash their hands. It's indifference. That is what happens when the heart hardens and becomes indifferent. Please, we have to get our hearts to feel again. We cannot remain indifferent in the face of such human dramas. The globalization of indifference is a very ugly disease.
Wow. It's also something that's probably seen a spike since social media came out, right? I used to cringe I had a hard time seeing like someone punch another person, and then you watch countless videos of street fights and violence and and gore and things like that the heart really does become hardened, and we have a hard time feeling that empathy for others when we see that out there. There's so much war that goes on, and if it happens to somebody who doesn't look like us, do we even care? I mean, we should, right? So Pope Francis spoke about the ending of wars, which, that's one of the biggest things we speak about here, right? The senseless wars that divide us, the reckless fear that's stoked by our government at times to say, what side do you want to be on? Our side versus their side. I'm on the human side, right? I want us all to be on the side of compassion, those that help each other out. We should live in the year of 2025, the good Lord's year. We should live in a world where we have enough abundance that it can all go around. And yet, for whatever reason, we look up to these billionaires as our modern day gods, and they are not. They are not worth anything. They are not worth any more than a peasant is worth in the world we live in. Maybe in the capitalistic world they do. But in the world where we're all a beating heart, we don't need to look up to these billionaires like they figured it out. No, we need to all share in that abundance that comes from technology and automation and AI, all of that abundance that's out there. Rather than siphoning it upwards to the elite class, we can all benefit from that. We can all work a little less. We can all share all of that love. And I just see the world that we live in as we're arguing left versus right and not up versus down. I don't think you have to inherently have a political conversation when you talk religion, but I think it comes when you see religion in our country being used to divide us. Those, prayers that they made before they started bombing a Yemen building, a building that had a bunch of innocent lives in it. I don't know what God they're praying to, but it's not the one I would. And then I wanted to also mention something. I'm wagging my finger here, but I was so disgusted by one specific commenter who goes by the name Jules. And I wanted to talk about it here. My wife deleted the comment before I could even share it, but I posted my Easter photos with my son here. It's his first Easter. He's 11 and a half months old. So it was actually the last holiday he had, going through the list of holidays your first year of being born. And we had such a great family day where we put him in some cute bunny outfits. And actually the last photo, he was scared of the Easter eggs and he cried. And it's actually the cutest. We're going to have to make a poster out of it. It's the cutest photo in the world. But we shared these, this nice moment with my family. And, it's a little bit rare that I share the bigger the podcast gets, the less I share these personal things. But I got a comment from one person saying, "You're an atheist. Why are you celebrating Easter?" But they said it in such a snarky way. And then they later responded to another post saying, "Why are you talking about the Pope? You're an atheist." I've never once called myself an atheist. I am calling out those that hide behind religion for their own culture war battles. I promise you, if you listen to Jesus' teachings, he wouldn't have cared about a lot of the cultural issues that exist out there. He would have been on the side of dining with the poor and helping them out and washing their feet. Where is that in our country? So if anyone has any ideas about commenting on any of my posts that involve my family, I'm telling you right now, it's an echo chamber. It better be positive, or you got to go. I gave Jules grace and said, I'm going to give you one more chance to get it right, but you're not welcome in our community if you're not bringing love, acceptance, grace, happiness, and so forth. All right. Well, coming up next, we've got an amazing story, possibly a big breakthrough with the Justin Baldoni case. I'll explain next. So Blake Lively was named to Time's 100 most influential list. Oh boy, that might have been a bad idea. I hadn't even considered this, but K-Mac Esquire says that Justin Baldoni's attorney said they could possibly use this to counter Blake's points that she's had any reputational harm done. I mean, how much harm can you have done if you were still named Time Magazine's 100 most influential? Have a listen.
I think this will fit into the litigation. And I say that because one of her claims is that, listen, my reputation has been so damaged by what he's done to me. Like, this has hurt me so bad. Like, I'm at a loss. So how do you reconcile that with being named one of the most influential people? So this is one thing I would certainly expect to get brought up. How her reputation was so damaged if she was able to achieve this really notable thing the following year.
Well, maybe she could argue that she would have been named Time Person of the Year if it wasn't for this, all because she donated to the NAACP 5 years ago. All right. Well, here's another interesting story. I'm gonna read some from the Team Justin Baldoni subreddit. Brian Friedman and Blake Lively lawyers comment on the Vanzan Subpoena, which talked about documents starting from December of 2022. Now, I'm going to share what Brian Friedman had to say, but here's interesting as they break it down. The way the facts align surely paints a picture. Jones first breaches the Wayfair contract by showing text messages from the iPhone to Sloan on August 21st, 2024. Then, on September 27th, 2024, Blake and Ryan file a business breach of contract lawsuit in the name of the company Vanzan, which no one has ever heard of, against only John Doe defendants. Vanzan has nothing to do with Wayfair or It Ends With Us. So basically, they claim that they had a contract with parties that don't know which parties they had a contract with. They serve the subpoena to Stephanie Jones, asking for documents related to Blake Lively, Ryan Reynolds, and Baldoni, naming Justin by name, but neither the Lively lawyers or Stephanie Jones notify Justin, even though it's both New York and California law to do so. They don't notify Jen Abel either. And the subpoena asks for documents from December 22nd, which is exactly what Judge Lehman denied them when they made to file a subpoena the proper way. Because Wayfair had a chance to quash the subpoena, and apparently we're just supposed to buy that this is entirely normal and just clever lawyering, what the F do the Lively lawyers mean it was disclosed in her first filing? So lots of questions to get answered. But essentially what I gleaned from this was that Judge had already denied a broad subpoena, and yet they were able to get one initially through that sham lawsuit, which again, they're saying is perfectly fine. I'm going to share what Blake Lively's side has to say after we share Brian Friedman's side. Now, he just responded to this on Deadline. Miss Lively's and Mr. Reynolds' company, Vanzan, had nothing to do with this case, and they knew it, Brian Friedman told Deadline on Monday. This sham lawsuit. And by the way, the idea being that Vanzan is like their shadow company that they don't use, but it's just there for frivolous lawsuits, threats, etc. This sham lawsuit was designed to obtain subpoena power without oversight or scrutiny, and in doing so denies my clients the ability to contest a propriety, nature, and scope of the subpoena. Having filed more than his fair share of Doe suits over the years and taken slings and arrows for his tactics, Brian Freeman added, there is nothing normal about this. Officers of the court have a duty of candor to the court and an obligation not to file fictitious lawsuits that have no basis in fact or law. A party with no connection to these proceedings asserting a breach of contract against another party they claim not to be able to identify does not qualify. This was done in bad faith and constitutes a flagrant abuse of process. That's what Brian Friedman had to say. On the other side, Blake Lively's primary lawyers, that's Sir Hudson and Mike Gottlieb, not only acknowledge the Doe lawsuit, but assert it is above board and the best way to get to the heart of the online attacks on their client that marred the summer 2024 premiere of the domestic violence-themed It Ends With Us. They said this, there is nothing untoward here, just conscientious and thorough investigation. The Lively parties acted upon reliable information and employed common tools, such as Doe lawsuits and civil subpoenas, that are entirely lawful and appropriate for pursuing claims and uncovering the identity of unknown perpetrators of unlawful activities. Well, my question would be, if it's so normal, how come the judge denied such a subpoena? This lawsuit unearthed the Wayfair party's documented plan, in their own words, in their own text messages, to destroy Blake Lively, a plan which they executed without transparency, disclosure, or notice to Miss Lively or the public. So the question about whether or not this is ethical, it seems to be pretty solid knowledge that this wasn't ethical. But they're saying, hey, the results are, we saw that you guys were conspiring to do X, Y, and Z. Justin Baldoni's side would argue, actually, we didn't do all of these things. We were just planning in case you went on the attack on us. And if we were notified of this subpoena, we would have responded with the upside down emoji and all of the other things that later, were used in their defense. So again, interesting stuff hearing from both sides. At the very least, it looks like Blake's side was caught red-handed. So they're saying, no, nothing to see here. This is exactly what we expected. Now, what Blake's Lively side is saying is Miss Lively voluntarily disclosed the subpoena in her first filing, knowingly that it would ultimately be produced to the Wayfair parties in discovery. And that is precisely what will happen as Miss Lively's claims move forward in the proper litigation process. I can't believe it. This thing's going to trial as far as I'm concerned. As you guys know, we asked our pals at the Ask Two Lawyers there what they thought, and they said 99% chance it settles. Now I want to know, I need to get an update. What is the updated percentage? Will this thing settle? I don't want it to. Here's another interesting thing from Team Justin Baldoni subreddit. Another potential notice for Blake continuing with his lawsuit. Sequel rights up for grabs again if Wayfair goes bankrupt or talent is unavailable. Derivative rights can become available for acquisition by outside producers when the original production company, Wayfair, goes bankrupt or if the company decides not to make a sequel because talent is unavailable. Derivative rights are also put up for sale by library owners. So it's this idea, maybe they wanted to bankrupt Wayfair so that they could take over the project. Again, it's a whole lot to do just for a little film, but hey, when money and ego are on the line, who knows what can happen, right? All right, let's do this. Let's reset the deck. I'm going into politics, folks. Not me, I'm running for office. I'm running for chief of the podcasters. No, I'm just Department of Podcasting. DOP, come on, Department of Okay, DOP. So anyhow, I'm going to cover a few political stories. Please stick around and we'll be back to discuss what the heck the Democratic Party is up to turn that poor showing in the past election around. That coming next. Very interesting conversations going around out there with DNC Vice Chair David Hogg. He says they're rooting out ineffective Democrats by primarying them in the upcoming midterm election. This is pissing off a lot of people. I love it. Have a listen.
The organization you have talked about this week, Leaders We Deserve, $20 million to primary, possibly so-called asleep at the wheel Democrats in safe seats in the House. Why?
Look, ultimately, our approval rating as a party is at 27% right now with our base.
Bingo. That's all you need to know. The approval rating sucks with Democrats. Listen, I don't care what Republicans do. I will only vote in future elections for candidates that stop taking money, for candidates that are making money in the stock market. I need clean candidates. And by that, I mean, I want people that I know are doing what's right for the American populace. Whether you're left, right, Democrat, Republican, Independent, I don't care. I want to know that whoever's in office I'm voting for is doing what's right for us, not their billionaire donors or lobby groups or whatnot. So they're getting a lot of pushback. They're saying, oh my gosh, why are we putting money into primarying Democrats that already exist in office? And my thought is, who the hell cares? May the best candidate win. This is the world I want to live in. Scorched earth, get new blood in there that is willing to fight for Americans. This is what I think. I'd love to know what you guys think about this. People will say, oh, there's only so many resources to go around. We need to spend that money in districts where we... No. Money, first of all, money doesn't even matter as much anymore when it comes to elections. We all love social media. We can all draw an audience if we have good ideas and if we have a great voice to communicate those ideas. And I want to see passion and youthful energy. That doesn't mean you have to be young. Bernie Sanders has more youthful energy out there than a lot of people, but I want to see people out there fighting for things that we all know we can get. Universal health care, paid family leave, so moms don't have to worry about pumping extra breast milk 2 weeks after having a baby because they got to go back to work. We live in what's supposed to be one of the wealthiest countries in the world. We can afford all of these things. Let's focus on getting leadership that will fight for all of us to achieve that. I know it's possible. So I don't care what they have to say about saying, oh, we shouldn't primary these people. Bring it on. We'll see you at the midterms. And you better be careful where you're taking your money. I'm not voting for anybody. And I encourage you guys as well to not vote for anybody that is taking corporate money or money that comes from dark places. Only money that is funded by the people. All right. Well, Harvard University is suing the Trump administration. Is this a part of Legally Blonde 2.0? I don't think so. Have a listen.
Harvard University is firing back, suing the Trump administration, arguing that it is unconstitutional to freeze billions of dollars in federal aid and violating the First Amendment. In a statement, Harvard's president, Alan Garber, writes this, quote, the consequences of the government's overreach will be severe and long-lasting. The time ahead will demand much from each of us, but I am as confident as ever in our ability to meet our challenges with integrity and resolve.
And it helps that they have $50+ billion to fight that war chest, and good for them. Good for them. We don't need an executive branch telling private universities what they can and cannot teach about. We don't. So I look forward to hearing more about that. All right, and again, an update on Pete Hegseth, the Department of Defense. It's pretty widely assumed at this point he's probably or most likely going to get fired. Look at this. The odds of him getting fired spiked just in the last couple days. The betting market suggests his chances of sticking around through July are a lot worse than a few days ago. So we'll have to see. Again, this after the second Signalgate scandal broke out where it was found out he was texting war plans to his wife. You can't do that. How about an update with the tariff war, the trade war that was started by the Trump administration, not just to China, but really to the whole globe? How's it going for us? Well, China warns countries not to team up with the U.S. against it on trade. Curbing trade with China to curry favor with the United States would be selfish and short-sighted, the government said, promising to retaliate. And by the way, how dumb are we, I say we, but the Trump administration, to start a trade war with a country that is holding all of our debt? Right? They are the second largest holder of U.S. Treasury bonds. They own over $750 billion worth. It's mutually beneficial because it allows the U.S. to continue spending money and it provides China with an ultra-safe investment. Well, guess who has us by the balls? China does, whether we like it or not. Trump wanted to play poker with them, but they have the upper hand because we like to buy things and we're not going to be manufacturing them in the United States, not in any significant capacity. It's just not going to happen. So this is not going to go well for the U.S. We already knew this. The stock market knows it. When is he going to flinch? What's he going to do to pretend like he got a victory out of this? Because I tell you what, J.D. Vance calling the Chinese people peasants, that's not going to do it. The Chinese, they want to be respected, and these are very delicate relations when you're trading with other countries. And for the Chinese to come out and say, no, we're not going to accept everybody cutting us out of it. We're going to cut you out of it. So we're going to be, I'm telling you folks, it ain't going to look pretty. And again, I already shared this, but here's just another clip. China ain't playing.
China is fully prepared to fight to the very end because the world is big enough that the United States is not the totality of the market in the world. So if the United States wants to go in that direction of completely shutting itself out of the China market, be my guest.
Yeah, and China will lose the US market, which, as I've said, is 15%.
We don't care. We don't care. China has been here for 5,000 years. Most of the time, there was no United States.
There you go. No U.S. and they survived. Hey, newsflash, breaking news out there. China ain't playing and they don't give a okay? That's the world we're dealing with. How do you negotiate with that? Well, you started it. And boy, the way I tell you what, it looks like when you ever watch those viral videos where the bully gets owned, right? Some bully picks a fight and they pick it with the wrong person and that person just knocks the bully out. That's what this feels like. And I wish I wasn't on the side of it that I'm on, but that's where we are. What are we going to do about it? We'll have to see. That's all I've got for you right now. I appreciate all the support we've had on our social media channels, Patreon, our Facebook community, Dave Neal's community on Facebook. It's free. The Rush Hour with Dave Neal on Instagram, D Neals on Instagram and on TikTok. Thank you guys all so much. We'll be back this afternoon. We'll see you then. I'm Dave, and this is The Rush.